dukore agasave kagufi cyane karadufata iminota 2.
We're going to have a quick survey. It's going to take us 2 minutes.
Ndashaka ngo mushira amaboko hejuru nimbuzi umuntu.
I want you to raise your hand if you know someone.
Nibuzi umuntu ukoresha ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone that uses drugs.
Muri community zacu.
In our community, if you know someone that uses drugs, please raise your hand.
Okay. Ikibazo cha kabiri. Please munyumve.
Please let's follow.
Nimbuzi umuntu muri community yacu warashwe akagira Imana agasurvivinga cyangwa agapfa azize ko yari mu biyobyabwenge mu buryo bumwe cyangwa se ubundi shira ukuboko hejuru.
Number 2, if you know someone in our community that was shot, either died or survived because of the drug use, please raise your hand.
Mushira amaboko hejuru. Murakoze.
Thank you.
Nibuzi umwe mu rubyiruko rwacu cyangwa se byaba ari n'umugabo wabuze akazi cyangwa se watakaje akazi ke kubera ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa se kunywa inzoga nyinshi akageraho bamwirukana mu kazi ubakaba nta kazi afite cyangwa yarigeze kubura akazi sometime.
Third question, if you know someone in our community that lost a job or cannot attend to a job because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu cyangwa se wagiye muri prison kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone who's in jail because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu ufite restraining order cyangwa se babujije kwegera umuryango we kubera violence cyangwa ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa inzoga nyinshi ukuboko hejuru.
Please raise your hand if you know someone who's on restraining orders who cannot approach their family because of drug use.
Nibuzi umuntu license yiwe bayihagaritse kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone whose driving license was suspended because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi umuntu wakoze accident kubera ko yasinze cyangwa yamyoye ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know anyone in our community that was in driving under the influence, please raise your hand.
Cyanyuma nimbuzi umuntu wavuye mu ishuri cyangwa se urimo gustrugglinga mu ishuri.
If you know someone who dropped off from school or left or is struggling in school.
Ubushakashatsi bwerekanye ko nje wari ko bareba hano 90%.
So as I was looking at you, 90%.
Bira bintu byose barabibona.
As I'm looking, 90% of all of you have seen this within our community.
Rero iyi presentation yanje ko nayise impuruza a wake up call.
Oh, okay, so my presentation is really a wake up call.
Hari ababyeyi bareresha abana ama telefone.
There are parents that are using telephone to parents
ariko umwana afite telefone ku myaka ingahe arayikoresha.
So we all have, all our kids have phones.
Iyo umwana w'imyaka 14 umugore iPhone akayirarana mu cyumba cye uri umubyeyi uzi icyo cyumba nikakora niyo telefone.
So when you give a 14-year-old a phone and you let them sleep with it, what do you know? What do you think they're using the phone for? The research showed 2 things that are so scary. So children are starting to try the drugs at the age of 14 when they're in middle school.
muri statistique z'abana bashaka kwiyahura abenshi ubu nyine hariho icyorezo cya social media cyo kohereza abana ama message yo kubabwira ngo nibiyahure.
There is another messages that are being sent out to kids' phones to tell them to commit suicide.
Hari umuntu muri community zacu deretse kuvugana afite umwana w'imyaka 12 cyangwa 11.
There's someone in our community that I spoke to has a 13.
Yegera ababyeyi arabwira ati you know what ati ndashaka kwiyahura.
The child went to school and came back. Told their parents that they want to commit suicide.
Depression.
And the parents was like, what's going on? The child said, I feel depressed.
Twibwira ko abana bacu ari impinja ariko abana bari muri isi bari exposed ku bintu biteye ubwoba tutazi.
We think that children are still little, but they're exposed to so many scary and dangerous.
Subscribe to Papa Legend TV.
Ndagira ngo mbanze nshimire ubuyobozi bw'amahoro kuba bwaradusabye cyangwa se bukadutumira kugira ngo tuze kuba muri uyu munsi, nubwo turi abayoboke b'amahoro twari kuza tukabana n'abandi, ariko kuba mwaradusabye kuza tukagira icyo dufasha cyangwa se tuganira, turabibashimiye. Icyongeyeho ndashimira abantu bose ko mwaje mungana, ariko kandi nk'uko ba mbere babivuze nari nzi ko naniteze ko iyi sale tuza kuyuzura, ariko abaje ngira ngo abayobozi bacu b'amatorero bazi ko ubutumwa bwa Yesu bwajanywe n'abantu 12 gusa. So uwaje hano abaye umudisciple cyangwa umwigisha byagera ku bantu benshi. Bansabye kuganira ku kibazo cy'ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa se ikibazo cy'indwara zo mu mutwe, cyane cyane mu rubyiruko. Sinzi nimba abashinzwe ibyuma baza kudufasha. Okay, good. Nabanje gushira aka gafoto, abantu bari hano muri kundagira slide bikavaho. Okay, good. Abantu bari hano muri 2004 igihe mahoro ishingwa nibashira amaboko hejuru. George ari hano, Pastor George. Hariho Pastor George, nabonye na Mama Anastasie. Hari undi muntu? Nanje wa gatatu. Iyi mahoro mubona ingana gutya dore aho yatangiriye. Umunsi tuyitangira harimo Honorable Nyarugabo, twaramutumye va muri Kongo araza, ntabwo twari tuzi ko tuzagera. Iyo ngiye mu bintu by'amahoro nkabona abantu bangana gutya, nubwo bibera hanze y'igihugu cyacu, shima Imana ko dufite n'izo mbaraga zo kubasha gutekereza iwacu tungana gutya. Uriya munsi hano muri Amerika twese n'abana n'abadamu n'umuntu waraye avutse ntitwari turenze abantu 100, ariko muzi ko tungana hano. Izo mbaraga rero ko zazamutse kandi mu gihe gito tugomba kuzibyaza umusaruro, tutarebye kuri babandi bavuze ingunga bashaka kuduhagarika. Bariya mujye mubihorera mukomeze mutera imbere. Reka ninjire muri subject. Ikibazo cy'uburwayi bwo mu mutwe mu mpunzi cyangwa se mu makominote y'impunzi kiri too general, ni kinini cyane. Nashatse kugira ngo noneho ndeke kubiganira nk'uko nsanzwe mbikora, tubimanure tuvuge ikibazo kiri mu rubyiruko rwacu. Umwaka ushize turi mu kwibuka naganire kuri ibi bintu, kandi nari kumwe na presidente n'ubuyobozi turabiganira. Ndangije ikiganiro mu mezi 2 yakurikiye nabonye amatelefoni ndashobora gusobanura uko yanganaga. Abantu bari hano abakurikiye kuri YouTube no muri Afurika bose bambwira ngo wadufasha gute. Hari n'abantu baje kunshaka ndi muri Afurika ngo tubonane, umuntu yambwira ikibazo cye nkumva ni umuntu urwaye wabuze umufasha. Ariko uyu munsi wa none nashatse kugira ngo ikibazo bampaye isaha yo kuvuga, ariko ndavuga iminota 30. nimba nabishira mu minota 30 ahasigaye tuje inama kuko ntituzahora tuvuga ikintu tudakora guhora tuvuga nta action tubishiramo biba bya bindi kandi nta consequence tugakomeza kuzibona cyangwa se ingaruka tuzibona nagize ngo mumfashe twigishwa ko iyo ugeze mu rwego rwa PhD tuvuga ibintu bidafite ubushakashatsi kandi none sinjya mu bushakashatsi kuko narabukoze abashaka igitabo nazakibatiza cyangwa se nkakibaha mukagisoma ariko nagize ngo dukore ubushakashatsi bwihuse cyane muze kubona ibisubizo mwihereza mwenyine ndagira ngo abantu babe honest muzajye mushira ukuboko hejuru aje gusobanura okay thank you nabishize mu rurimi rw'amahanga ariko nkavuga ngo kubivuga abantu bumva niwo uravuga
urubyiruko ruri hano kandi ni topic yabo
wowe tuvugira mu cyongereza ndagira ngo dukore agasave kagufi cyane karadufata iminota 2
we're going to have a quick survey it's going to take us 2 minutes
ndashaka ngo mushira amaboko hejuru nimbuzi umuntu
I want you to raise your hand if you know someone.
Nibuzi umuntu ukoresha ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone that uses drugs.
Muri community zacu.
In our community, if you know someone that uses drugs, please raise your hand.
Okay, ikibazo cha kabiri. Please munyumve.
Please let's follow.
Nimbuzi umuntu muri community yacu warashwe akagira Imana agasurvivinga cyangwa agapfa azize ko yari mu biyobyabwenge mu buryo bumwe cyangwa se ubundi shira ukuboko hejuru.
Number 2, if you know someone in our community that was shot, either died or survived because of the drug use, please raise your hand.
Mushira amaboko hejuru. Murakoze.
Thank you.
Nibuzi umwe mu rubyiruko rwacu cyangwa se byaba ari n'umugabo wabuze akazi cyangwa se watakaje akazi ke kubera ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa se kunywa inzoga nyinshi akageraho bamwirukana mu kazi ubu akaba nta kazi afite cyangwa yarigeze kubura akazi sometime.
Third question, if you know someone in our community that lost a job or cannot attend to a job because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu cyangwa se wagiye muri prison kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone who's in jail because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi ko hari umuntu ufite restraining order cyangwa se babujije kwegera umuryango we kubera violence cyangwa ibiyobyabwenge cyangwa inzoga nyinshi ukoko hejuru.
Please raise your hand if you know someone who's on restraining orders who cannot approach their family because of drug use.
Nibuzi umuntu license yiwe bayihagaritse kubera ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know someone whose driving license was suspended because of drug use, please raise your hand.
Nibuzi umuntu wakoze accident kubera ko yasinze cyangwa yamyoye ibiyobyabwenge.
If you know anyone in our community that was in driving under the influence, please raise your hand.
Cyanyuma nimbuzi umuntu wavuye mu ishuri cyangwa se urimo gustrugglinga mu ishuri.
If you know someone who dropped off from school or left or is struggling in school.
Ubushakashatsi bwerekanye ko nje wari ko bareba hano 90%.
So as I was looking at you, 90%.
Bira bintu byose barabibona.
As I'm looking, 90% of all of you have seen this within our community.
Rero iyi presentation yanje ko nayise impuruza a wake up call.
Oh, okay, so my presentation is really a wake up call.
Turugarijwe.
We are under threat.
Yeah, yes.
We are under threat.
Genocide turi mu kureba genocide ikorerwa iwacu ntitukumve ijambo genocide kariya kanyuma side ni imbuto irimo gushira tureba.
As we talk about the word genocide, the very last word is seed, it means there's a seed that is basically being extinct.
mureke mbereke imibare mike yakozwe. Hari abantu bake twaganiriye tugerageza guhuza imibare hano muri Amerika na Canada no mu Burayi.
I would like to show you numbers or statistics that I talked with few people here. So the statistic was done here in the United States, Canada and Europe.
Tumaze kubura abantu 22.
We've lost 22 people
bapfuye mu buryo bumwe cyangwa ubundi ariko buhuje ku biyobyabwenge cyangwa se inzoga.
Who died in many different ways but was related really to drug use.
Imibare ntabwo ari numbers gusa, ntabwo ari imibare, ubu n'ubuzima bw'abana bacu.
So these numbers are not just numbers, these are lives of people.
Aba ni abakobwa bacu, ni abahungu bacu, ni barumuna bacu, ni bakuru bacu.
These are relatives, cousins, sisters, brothers.
Nagerageje kureba muri Amerika, hari uwigeze kuvuga hano ko ari icyorezo, ibo bakimenye mbere bafata ingamba.
Here in the States, opioid use or drug use has been already classified as a epidemic.
Mu mwaka w'ibihumbi 2019 hapfuye abantu barenga 50,000 bishwe na overdose cyangwa se kunywa ibiyobyabwenge birenze umuntu agapfa.
In 2019, there were over 50,000 people who died from opioid use here in the States.
Bari urubyiruko ruri hagati y'imyaka 25 kugeza kuri 34.
And it was a youth between 25 to 34 years old, male mostly.
So, niki gitera ibyo bintu?
What's causing this?
Reka mpere kuri trauma.
Let me start with the trauma.
Apotre yabivuze.
Apostle said it.
Ngira ngo nicyo gituma bazanye ikiganiro cyanje nyuma y'iki kugira ngo twunganirane.
This is why they probably put me behind him so that it becomes a continuation.
Yavuze rwose rwo kuva mu minembwe tukirukanwa tukaja mu nkambi tukagera mu gatumba
So the journey coming from the DRC going to refugee camps all the way here.
Ntabwo turi ibiti. Biriya bintu biracyaturimo.
I always tell people that we're not trees. These things has affected us. They're still in us.
Nje mfite ikibazo ngira ngo Bibiliya ni bivugira avuga ngo ubwenge bwinshi butera umuruho. Umuruho kumenya ibintu ukabona abandi bantu ni nkaho batabizi ndababara mutima.
Sometimes knowing so many things, it causes you to feel fatigue.
Iyo ngeze mu rusengero cyangwa se mu mbare ya pastor ndakomeza mvuga.
When I arrive in the church and I'm going to excuse myself from the pastors.
Nkabona umukutano w'iminsi 2 abayumbe.
And I see 2 days gathering for the bayumbe.
Tugasimbuka from Friday kugeza ku wa gatanu.
We jump or gusirimba from Friday to Sunday.
And
no one is talking about drug use in our families. They don't even pray for it. My heart is sudden.
So, trauma uko ifata ndabinyuramo gato cyane kuko ni somo rirerire mu mbabarire.
So trauma is a very long lesson, but I'm going to talk about quickly of how it happens.
Biriya bintu byose twanyuzemo, aho wanyuze hose ugahura n'ikibazo. Nariya apotre yavuze ko yagize ikibazo ari kuri immigration hano, bimwibutsa ko yagahagara ku mabariyeri. Iriya ni trauma.
Anytime you go through a problem, and the way Apostle said that he had a PTSD or traumatic event when he would approach a border post.
Flashback.
So that was, we call that a flashback.
Flashback, Nick.
Flashback, what is a flashback? It's something that comes and it triggers you to remember something you saw in Gatumba massacre.
Kurugero nk'amafoto yerekanye hari umuntu ushobora kuba ari hano yaracitse ku icumu mu Gatumba, iriya foto igahita imugarura akumva na smell ya matente yari mwasha.
For example, he showed some pictures from the Gatumba massacre. Some people may see that picture and it brings them back exactly to that moment, and they can even smell how it was.
bya bintu byabaye mu Gatuma ntaho byagiye biri muri diske dire yo mu mutwe wacu.
So everything that happened in Gatumba, it's being stored somewhere in our brain.
byabaye abantu birukanwa bavuye Uvira baje he ntaho byagiye biri mu mitwe yacu.
What happened when people were being forced to flee from Uvira, it didn't go anywhere, it's still in our brains.
iyo ugize akantu rero kabikwibutsa,
If you have something that really triggers you,
zose biza kwa kundi wabibonye uko byakabaye.
everything comes right back like live.
N'impumuro
Even the smell,
iraza.
but it comes back.
Umuntu wagize accident y'imodoka ikamuhiraho akumva essence irimo gusha,
If you had a car accident and you can smell the gas,
nyuma y'imyaka 20
after 20 years,
ataravuwe,
if you didn't get treatment,
iyo anyuze ku muhanda akabona imodoka iri gusha yumva yasme ari mu modoka yifunze arayumva.
if they're just driving on the road and they see a car burning, they smell back
nagerageje kubereka
the gas.
iriya ni CT scan y'ubwonko bw'umuntu.
So I'm showing you a CT scan of a brain.
Igice cya hano kiri cyitwa nomo ni kuri ubwonko bwacu bugomba kumera.
Okay, so the right side that says normal, that's how our brain should be.
Ibi bice mubona by'umutuku,
The red dots,
brain iri healthy.
it's a healthy brain.
Ni brain ifite ubuzima bwiza, ubwonko bufite ubuzima bwiza.
It's a healthy brain tissue.
Iyi foto ni y'umwana wagize trauma, wagize abuse mu muryango.
This CT scan is a CT scan of a child that was abused.
Hano hariya hirya murabona ko harimo amazone menshi ari dark.
And the other side, you see many black spots in the CT scan.
Aha, iyi ni trauma yamaze ubwonko, ni trauma yahinduye ubwonko.
So the black spots that you're seeing is the trauma that has affected the brain.
Ubwonko bwahindutse.
So that brain has changed.
Ntabwo bushobora gukora nk'ubwonko butarahinduka.
So the brain that has changed cannot function the way the brain works.
Uturemangingo twa buriya bwonko twangiritse.
So there are some brain tissues that really have been damaged.
Ariko hari uko dushobora kuvura.
But there are ways to repair them.
Ariko ni kuriya ubwonko bwo trauma ihindura ubwonko bw'umuntu.
But that's how trauma changes our brain tissues.
None hari ubushakashatsi bwakozwe vuba.
So there's a recent research.
Naza kubereka.
I'm going to show it to you.
Ubushakashatsi bwakozwe harimo n'umwana w'umunyarwandakazi psychiatrist.
It's also there's a Rwandese lady that's a psychiatrist.
Ababishaka nabohereza kaga slide.
I'm happy to show the slides.
Trauma itakiri kuri iriya level y'ubwonko gusa, noneho yageze no mu majene, sinzi gene twazita mu rurimi rwacu, ariko n'uturemangingo tugize umuntu wari we nawe azamukomokaho.
So yabaye akarande.
Yes.
Okay. So the research that was done by Rwandese psychiatrists has shown that the trauma is not only in our brain, but it also has gone into our genes.
It's intergenerational transfer of the trauma.
It's being transferred from generation to the other. What does this mean?
Biriya bintu tubona byo kwicwa, byo kugirirwa nabi.
When we see violence and discrimination,
bikinjira no muri biological uko imibiri yacu iteye na twa turemangingo.
So it enters in our DNA.
Ku buryo umwana uzabyara azavukana ya trauma.
In a way that even when you birth a child, it will come with the trauma.
Nuko nicarana bande bakavuga ngo turabona usa nabo kwa naka.
The way you see me and you say you look like you look familiar.
Ako kantu ka trauma nako kazajya kagenda kavuka muri abo bana.
So that type of trauma also transfer itself into the next generation.
Ni ampuruzi.
So really, the reason why I'm saying this is because there is a wake-up call.
Ubushakashatsi nakoze muri PhD imyaka 4.
My research for my PhD
yerekanye ko abazungu
4 years, it shows that the white people,
b'Abanyamerika,
the American,
bafashe impunzi nkatwe twese twahuye n'ibibazo.
The American people who help refugees,
tubanduza trauma yacu.
We have transferred our trauma back to them.
trauma rero ni indwara nka malaria.
So trauma, consider trauma as an illness like malaria. The way a mosquito bites you, it can bite you and then you can transfer back to another person.
Impamvu zindi zituma naremvuze ku buryo bwa trauma, impamvu zituma abana bacu baja mu biyobyabwenge ni trauma ishobora kuba iva mu babyeyi. Ubu nyine turebera mu bantu none twavuga ngo abana batunaniye ariko ituva mu twebwe.
So really the other cause of trauma is that trauma that comes from the parents but then it transferred to the kids and we think that there is something wrong with the kids but it really came from the parents.
Hari abana batabaye mu gatumba bavutse nyuma gatumba.
There are kids who are not in Gatumba.
Ariko kubera ko wa mwana arerwa n'umubyeyi traumatized.
But because the kid is being raised by a traumatized parent.
Ubwo rero turimo tubahereza nta kindi tubaha icyo dufite.
So that we're giving them what we have.
Izindi mpamvu hari impamvu nise intano ziturimo twenyine n'iziri hanze.
So there are other causes that are internal and external.
Reka manze vuga iziturimo apotre yabivuze.
So let me talk about the internal ones that Apostle shared.
Mwa miryango mwe b'abanyamulenge muri hano.
Dear families of Banyamulenge that are here.
Impuruza naje kuvuga none ni kubaha ubutumwa buvuga ngo.
The wake up call that I bring today says.
Ibiyobyabwenge tubona mu bana bacu ni indwara.
The drug use that we see in our children is an illness.
Nitureke kwihishira.
Let's not hide it.
Nitureke guhishira ibibazo dufite.
Let's not hide the problems that we have.
Nitureke kujugunya abana.
Let's not abandon our children.
Muri za mvugo zacu tugira ngo umwana yatunaniye.
Let's not use the words that we use to use.
Dufite stigma yuko
the kids are
niba mbonye umwana wanje sinyizo ko yitwara.
Let's not stigmatize our kids. If we see a sign that a child is not behaving,
tubigira shame tukabigira isoni mu muryango.
We shame them and it becomes a shame to the family.
Tukabigira kirazira.
And we don't talk about it.
Ariko umwana yarwara asthma ukavugira abandi umwana arwaye asthma.
But when your child is sick with asthma, you're free to tell other people that your child has asthma.
Uko twigiza abana bacu, uko tubwira abana, ubwo dustigmatiza abana bacu, niko tubapushinga tubajana.
The more we push away our children, the more we stigmatize them, the more we push them away.
Kandi wa mwana iyo umubyeyi yamwigije hanze.
When the child is feeling pushed or disconnected from the family, he meets with other friends and they welcome him.
Dufite pressure mu mafamiye.
We have so much pressure in our families.
Harababivuze hano mshindaji yabivuze.
Most previous speakers touched on that.
Dufite ababyeyi bafata amadeni ngo mufite abana bazayanyishurira.
There are parents who take loans and they put it on the kids.
Abunzi bakuye abana babo ku ishuri ngo babafashe kwishura mortgage.
There are parents that I know that who have taken the kids from school and have asked them to work so they can pay for their bills.
Ngo dore uko ameze. Ngo ubona umwana wa naka twazanye hano. Ngo dore yarangije amashuri.
So they compare their children to the other children and they put so much pressure. And they use the other kids as example. I'm using the general terms that the Banyamulenge family or parents use to their kids. Even though there are many other causes that may cause our children to use drugs, but there are causes that come from within us.
Hariho disconnection. Abana bagera hano bakavuga ururimi vuba, ababyeyi ntibafite uburyo bwo kuruvuga.
There's also a disconnection between the parents and the children, mainly due to the language barrier, which faster. And parents go to work and they forget about children. In a nutshell, let's try to minimize the internal cause.
Turebe ese mu muryango wanje nigute nyimboresinga abana banje hari imiryango utagisangira n'abana.
Let's look within our families and say, how can I minimize these causes? For example, there are many families who do not even share dinner with their children. There are some families that have even 5 children, but when you enter, there's not even one child
wabaza umubyeyi ngo
around.
ese abana bari ngo babiyo hejuru
When you ask the parents, where are the kids? They say, oh, they're in their rooms.
iriya hejuru bazamanukana ibintu utazabasha gufata.
By the time they come down in the living room, they'll bring things that you will not know how to manage.
baba bariye
Or sometimes they say, oh, they're already eaten.
cyangwa ngo nimuzamuke muje iriya hejuru mu
Or
bisoro.
they would kick the kids out of the room. Go in your bedrooms. I have guests.
ibiri hejuru ntitubimenye.
You don't really know what they're watching in
hari
their
imigisha
rooms.
dufite yo kugira amazu manini afite hejuru no hasi n'iyo kuzimu,
We have
aho
a
twohereza
blessing.
abana tuba tuzi izo barimo gukora.
We have a blessing to have beautiful houses that have stairs, but when you send your children upstairs, are you sure of what they're watching?
Ni byinshi cyane twavuga bituvamo twenyine.
So there's so many that we can say that comes from
Reka
within.
tuvuge ibiri hanze.
Let's talk about the external
causes.
Yes, let's talk about the external causes.
Hariho peer pressure, abana gushaka kuba nk'abandi. Ya integration Apotre yavuze ikarenga umwana agashaka kumera nk'abasanze hano.
So there's a lot of peer pressure within our children who wants to assimilate to the American culture.
Nashimye ko Apostle nabwiye Dr. Alex yarati Apostle presentation yanje ayigeze hagati wagira ngo twari turi kumwe.
So Apostle really had touched on a lot of things that I was going to say. Zip code.
Icyo kintu kiza kindya mu mutwe nkumva narwaye isereri.
The issue of zip code zoning really bothers me.
Nigeze gukora ikiganiro n'umurageje Pense nimba nibuka mbwira abantu zip code icyo aricyo.
I've done some talks with Morage TV and I explain what it means to be in the zip code.
Zip code ari iriya mibare itanu gusa.
Zip code is not just the numbers, the 5
iriya
numbers.
mibare itanu mubona
Those 5 numbers that you see,
mbere yo kwinjira mu nzu iriya mibare itanu uzumenya ko ari ubuzima bwawe n'ubw'abana bawe n'abazagukomokaho.
before you get into a house, make sure you check the zip code and know that the future of your family and your children depends on
Hari
that.
uwabaje ngo se twamenya abaturanyi beza gute n'abaturanyi babi.
There's someone that asked, how do we know good neighbors and bad neighbors?
Turi kumwe afande Fidele nimba yasohotse sinzi.
We are here with Afande Fidel.
Nuzoja kurentinga apartment.
Before you rent an apartment,
Uzuja kuri police.
go to the police station.
Waguhereze dara cyangwa se baguha amakuru y'umutekano w'iyi zip code barabifite.
Go to the police station and ask for data for this apartment
Ni public information.
or the zip code. It's a public information.
Kandi police irabikunda pe.
And the police loves it.
Bakubwira ngo iyi apartment tuba twakira amakozi 200 ku kwezi y'abagore bahamagaye ko abana babo bafite imbunda. Aho hantu wajana bawe.
The police will tell you how many calls they have, like 911 calls they have received from that apartment.
Icyo ni kimwe cya kabiri. Internet ifite amakuru yose y'aha hantu ushaka kuri.
If you search through internet, it will also give you good data.
Icya gatatu.
Third,
mbere yo kuja muri apartment uzabanza ugende mbere yo kuja ku applica uzabanza uzenguruke n'imodoka yawe.
Before you apply into that neighborhood, take a car and drive around and check it out.
hanze nibo baturanyi bawe.
The people you will see in the neighborhood, those will be your neighbors.
Niwinjira muri neighborhood,
if you enter in any neighborhood,
niwinjira muri neighborhood ugasanga abantu bafunguye amamodoka ko ni nka garage karakorera imodoka ku muhanda uzasubireyo. Icyo ni kimwe kikwereka ko neighborhood y'abantu ari mbi.
If you enter in a neighborhood and you find people fixing their cars as if they're on the street, just turn around.
Ba nyiri ma apartment,
the owners of those apartments,
bazima ntibashobora kwemera ko ufungura imodoka ngo amavuta agwe mu muhanda habe mu mwanda.
The owners of the apartment will not allow for you to open a car and start fixing it so the oil or the gas.
Ugasanga umugabo ungana nanje yambaye isengere ku manywa yicaye imbere y'inzu karamwe itabi cyangwa afite inzoga saa 3 za mu gitondo uzahazana abana bawushake.
If you go in a neighborhood and you find a man like of his age in a t-shirt and smoking, what are you looking to bring your children to?
niwinjira muri neighborhood ukumva harimo muzika ukagira ngo winjiye muri hari akabari kabaga ibuvira ngo nimba ari abana bawuza bajanye ugiye kubashaka.
If you enter in a neighborhood and there is a car that is blasting music, please don't take your children there. So pay attention to the zip code.
Hari ikintu ngiye kuvuga abantu bambabarire.
There's something I would like to say, and please forgive me.
Nzi ko tuza hano abantu batishoboye hari ababa mu mazu ya leta.
And I know when we come here, there are people who are low income and some people use the government assistance.
Hari icyo bita Jim Crow law, abantu babizi, hari itegeko ryo muri za 60 ryashizeho hari amazoning baza gushira hari amazu ya leta kugira ngo babuze imiryango kuba homeless ariko babashire mu buzima. Bagire gusa roof igisenge ariko ibindi bibe.
There is a government law called Jim Crow law that was put in place many years ago to prevent homelessness, and they put houses where people can just leave, but they're really everything else doesn't really matter.
Uzano muri America bakaguha inzu ya leta uzayijemo ariko wumve kusa nuri mu nkambi ukore cyane vuba kugira ngo usohoke.
So when you first come to America and you are given a government assistance or like a house for the government's assistance, work hard and move out fast.
Kuko abanyamurenge ikintu tuzi hano muri America tuzi gukora.
As abanyamurenge, we're not lazy, we work hard.
Inzu bazaguha ibyumba 3-4 bakakubwira ngo uzajya wishura amadolari 10 ngo cyangwa utayabona ngo ureke uzayihunge please. Amadolari 10. Inzu bakakubwira ngo inzu ngo uzajya wishura amadolari 10 ni mu yamazu ya leta siko bigenda. Barakubwira ngo wakwishura ngo $10 ngo cyangwa nima ntayibonye ngo nta kibazo.
If you are given a really cheap house and they tell you to pay $10, if you have it you pay, if you don't, that house really
inzu y'amadolari munyumve ntabwo nabuza mu mbabarire uri mu nzu ya leta nyumve ndimo kuvuga reality ntabwo ari wende kuvuga.
Those who are using the government houses, please pay attention. I'm not saying names.
Inzu ya leta urimo y'amadolari 10 mugenzi wawe arimo yishura amadolari 500 niba nta bundi bushobozi ufite nta kundi wabigenza ariko ufite ubushobozi bwo kuva aho hantu nyaboneka ntabwo ari kukugirira neza aho hantu.
If you are paying $10 and someone else is paying over $1,000, if you have no other means, that's okay. But if you have means to move out of that house, that is not for your good to stay in that house.
Hari abantu benshi hariho case njewe y'umuntu nagiye kureba ndamubwira.
There's a case that I know that I went and spoke to someone about that house situation.
Asigara abwira abantu ngo nguriya mugabo ngo hantu satuye ngo nahaba ngo abantu barirata ndamubwira no. Aba bana nsanze hano hanze nasanze abana b'ubwoko bumwe ndashaka kuvuga ndamubwira ntabandi bo bazaba abakwe bawe n'abakazana bawe.
When I spoke to that man, he felt that the other places were too expensive, and I tried to convince him, and I showed him the kids that were around, and I said, these will be your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law. After 5 years, that's what happened.
Yagiye gusohoka ngo aguriza handi hamaze kugira damage zitagira uko zingana ntavugira.
By the time he was buying a house somewhere else, the damage was already done.
Zip code twayivuga tugatinda ariko hariho social media nayo irimo kutwicira abantu.
So I can talk about zip coding, but now next thing is the social media.
Hari ababyeyi bareresha abana amatelefone.
There are parents that are using telephone to parents the children. So we all have, all our kids have phones.
Iyo umwana w'imyaka 14 umugore iPhone akayirarana mu cyumba cye uri umubyeyi uzi icyo cyumba nikakora niyo telefone.
So when you give a 14-year-old a phone and you let them sleep with it, what do you know? What do you think they're using the phone
ubushakashatsi
for?
bwerekanye ibintu bibiri biteye ubwoba hano muri Amerika biri mu kuba.
The research showed two things that are so scary.
Abana batangira kugerageza ibiyobyabwenge bafite imyaka 14 bari muri middle school. guhera ku myaka 13
So children are starting to try the drugs at the age of 14 when they're in middle school.
Abo bana nanone muri statistique z'abana bashaka kwiyahura abenshi ubu nyine hariho icyorezo cya social media cyo kohereza abana ama message yo kubabwira ngo nibiyahure.
There is another messages that are being sent out to kids' phones to tell them to commit suicide.
Hari umuntu muri community zacu duherutse kuvugana afite umwana w'imyaka 12 cyangwa 11.
There's someone in our community that I spoke to has a teen.
Yegera ababyeyi arabwira ati you know what ati ndashaka kwiyahura.
The child went to school and came back. Told their parents that they want to commit suicide.
Zagenze gute numva afite depression.
And the parents was like, what's going on? The child said, I feel depressed.
Twibwira ko abana bacu ari impinja ariko abana bari muri isi bari exposed ku bintu biteye ubwoba tutazi.
We think that children are still little, but they're exposed to so many scary and dangerous things that we don't even know.
Ubu nyine hari igitabo dukoresha ni nka Bibiliya y'abantu bavura indwara zo mu mutwe igira classification y'indwara zose cyitwa DSM-5.
There's a book that psychologists used called DSM-5 that has all the classification of mental illnesses.
Kwinjiza ibintu by'ama electronics mu ndwara muco bita ngo ni gaming disorder condition.
Now there is another diagnosis that's going to enter in this book that's called gaming disorder.
Gaming disorder condition.
Gaming disorder condition.
Ibindi bitera abana bacu kuja mu biyobyabwenge dufite pressure y'ubuzima.
And the other thing is that our children have pressure, life pressure.
Abana bari mu mashuri sinzi wabivuze kare akazararengeje imyaka yagera hano ari umwana ushaka kwiga yagera mu mashuri bikamunanira akabura support agahera muri famille abura support akagera hanze muri community akabura support muri rusengero akabura support umwana akiheba.
So there are other children that come here who start school, and then when they get in school and they have some challenge learning fast, they lose support from their family. They don't have support in their family, in the church, and also in the community. They lose hope and they just give up. When they fail one time, their parents would joke about it, or you're a failure, you failed, just go to men and find a job.
Je nkora muri men hari abana baza nkamureba kavuga ngo uyu mwana avuye iwabo sinzi state avuyemo cyangwa se nabonye imodoka nkamureba mu maso ye ukabona umwana afite nk'ibiro 5 z'urumogi mu mutwe.
I work in Maine. I see a lot of young people who come to work. I look at them. I don't even know where they come from, and I can see just in their face, and I can tell they have about 5 pounds of drugs in their head.
Muri Maine umwana mukore 5,000 agasa n'umwikuye ngo genda ja muri Maine ja Arizona ja hahandi ariko umwana wamureba mu maso ukabona n'umurwayi wohereje kuja gukora.
When a child starts making $5,000 a month, the parents are so quick to push them away. But when you look at them, they're so sick and struggling.
Nigute abana batangira donc ibiyobyabwenge ni indwara y'ubwonko tugomba kumenya uwo mwana ararwaye ntumufata ngo umwohereze ahantu banza umufashe akire abone kuja mu buzima busanzwe.
So we have to understand that the drug use is really a mental illness. If your child is sick, you don't send them away. You have to care for them first before you send them away.
Kuja mu biyobyabwenge.
How do they even start?
Level ya mbere bayitangira ari experimental kugera gupima.
So they start off by experimenting.
You experience cyangwa se ku experimenting abifashwa n'inshuti ziwe.
The experimentation process starts with just trying out with friends.
Wohereza abana muri birthday y'umuntu utazi n'igihe yavukiye n'ababyeyi biwe uzi ngo abana bawe barakura iki.
It starts off by you sending your children off to a birthday of their friends that
umwana
you don't even
akaza ngo
know.
dade ngo ngiye ngo muri birthday ngo y'umuntu ngo y'inshuti yanje. Okay.
Your child comes and say, Daddy, I'm going to my friend's birthday that you don't even know. And then you say, okay, go.
Ujya ufata wa mwana ukamudrivinga ukamugeza kuri ya nzu ugahura n'aba babyeyi ukareba abana bari kumwe nawe mu nzu ugasiga umwana wawe wizeye aho umusize.
Do you take your child, drive him to his friends, look around and see what kind of friends he's going to be around, and then know where you leave your child?
abana bita ngo ni sleep over.
And then there's another thing called the sleepover.
Wa mubyeyi we ufata umwana ukamwohereza gusleeping over ku muntu mugasengana.
Parents, you take your child and you send them off to go have a sleepover to someone that you don't pray with.
Mutavuye mu muhano umwe ngo uramuzuza imico ye.
You didn't come from the same village, you don't share the same values.
Tuzi abana uko bitwara ukabwira umwana ngo go sleep over.
You don't even know how their friends conduct themselves and you just let them go.
Ibyo azakurayo
what they're going to bring back, you're going to use two hands.
That challenging ababyeyi.
I am challenging parents.
Sleep over. Nimba nje mfite abana bakuru ubu nyine ariko nabipfuye ngira umukobwa umwe twigeze kubipfa ndamubwira ngo mbere yo kuja gusleepinga over zoza mbanza mbonane n'uwo muntu tuganire nawe numva ko arira abana be. Sinshobora kukwemerera.
I have one daughter and I've had some fights with him, and I said, before I let you go have a sleepover, I'm going to have to meet with the parents and see and talk to them and see how they raise their children.
Byageze harumva abandi bamubwira akabwira ngo you know what, my dad was too African. Ambwira ndiwe nzakomeza ndewe.
So my daughter was used to it, and at some point my daughter got used to it, and she would tell her friends that my dad is too African, I can't come.
Timubona uko twikanze. Harawo bitwibukije amasasu twumvise. This is a trauma.
Absolutely. Did you see how we were startled? Some of us remember the gunshots that we
ibya kabiri iyo umwana avuye muri bijya byo ku experimenting arama none agakorora akagira gute ejo akavuga ati uziko nakoroye ariko numva ndi hayi bazita no kuba hayi no kuja hejuru kumva ari ahantu hanejeje yasinze.
After experimenting they cough a little bit, and then after that they're like, okay, I cough but I feel high, I feel good.
Nuko abana bacu agatangira akadoze gato none ejo bakamubwira ati ukozeho akageraho none haje muri addiction ubwonko bukarwara indwara ikamufata.
It started off by just a low dose and then you continue into becoming addicted.
Level ya gatatu negihe iyo bavuga addiction ubwiye no muri dictionary ukareba bavuga ko ari indwara y'ubwonko. Ico gihe ubwonko bwarwaye imbaraga z'umuntu z'umubiri we ziba zashize none hagakoreshwa n'ibiyobyabwenge.
So once the addiction really means that our body starts to just being used by the drugs.
Igatazibonye agashobora kuba adashobora no kuhaguruka ngo abe mu gitanda.
When you don't get the drugs, when the child doesn't get the drugs, they can't even leave the house.
No kubivamo yifashe umuntu kuva mu biyobyabwenge ngira ngo nsaba abantu bacu please. Umuntu nimba ari mu kiyobyabwenge akakubwira ngo ndashaka kubivamo ntukambwira ngo hagarika none. No. Abagiye gupfa. Iyo uhagaritse ni kuvuga ngo hagaritse ikintu cyari gifashe umubiri we gufunctioning. Uko bigenza aho ugomba kubona n'umuganga agatangira kumuha doze nkeya igendera amplasa bya biyobyabwenge kugeza igihe bizavira mu mubiri.
So when you make a decision to leave drug use, it's not advisable to just tell them to stop.
So n'umwana wawe afite behavior zitandukanye aje mu rugo atinze biruta uko byari bimeze atangiye kuvuga uko atavugaga hari ibimenyetso byinshi nk'umubyeyi ugize attention wabona ko umwana wawe ari guhinduka.
There are so many signs that can show that your child is changing. If they're coming home late, they're talking the way they don't usually talk. There's so many ways you can figure out that your child is changing and you can start to approach them.
inshuti zipapinga iwe ukajya wumva abantu barakomanza wareba iyo shusho ukabona ntawe wabonye umurenge.
And when you see friends just popping up and you don't even know their faces,
ukingurira umwana ngo ngaho genda,
and you open the door and you just let the child go.
Intergenerational trauma twayivuze uko abantu ba trauma igenda ija mu rubyaro.
We talked about intergenerational trauma.
So ibi byose byikubise ku mwana,
So when all these things fall on the child,
agomba kubona voie de sortie, agomba kubona ko escapinga aya pressure yose amuri.
there has to be a way to escape the pressures.
Aja mu nzoga ku escapinga PTSD ariyo trauma cyangwa anxiety cyangwa akazi cyangwa responsibility mwamuhaye cyangwa ibindi bintu byose bimugoye, akaja gushaka igituma byibuza asinzira.
So when the child has PTSD, anxiety, work pressure, school pressure, relationships, they find other ways to escape all that anxiety.
Harakote hano bavuze ngo ntabwo ari urumogi cyangwa se ma drugs atuma umuntu aba umu-addict, ahubwo nuko aba ashaka guhunga reality, nuko aba ashaka guhunga ibimureba biri aho ngaho bigaragara byamunaniye.
So there is a quote over there that says it's not the drugs that make a drug addict. It's the need to escape reality.
Okay, niki twakora?
What can we do
K'imiryango
as families?
nidufate iya mbere dufasha abana bacu.
We need to take the first step to help our children.
Duhagarike stigma, duhagarike ibintu bya kirazira yo kumva ko tutavuga ibibazo biri mu miryango.
We need to stop stigmatizing drug addiction.
Tureke gukora communication judging abana bacu.
Let's not judge our children.
Please.
Let's help our children.
Nko gusanga umuntu wagonzwe n'imodoka ugatangira kumuseka.
When you find them in a car crash and you start to laugh at them.
Duhindure mentality yacu.
Let's change our mentality.
Umwana wanaka urabizi yarananiranye.
And you start to talk about other kids.
Umwana yabaye kirara.
And you say they become difficult and you're pushing them away.
Tube involved mu buzima bw'abana bacu bakiri batoya.
Let's get involved in the lives of our children since they're little. Know where their children go.
Abo bari kumwe.
Know who they are with.
Uwo mubyeyi ukaze ejo bizaguha.
Sometimes you may need to be a strict parent.
N'ubuzima bw'ubwo bwatugora ariko tuba ababyeyi tugerageze gutanga umwanya.
Let's try to make time for our children. Mahoro.
Community zacu.
Our community.
Amatorero.
Our churches.
Nyabuneka.
Please.
Hari umuntu wavuze ngo ubuzima bwiza mu mubiri mwiza. A good soul in a good body. Bivuze ngo Imana twigisha,
the God that we teaches,
igomba kuza mu mubiri mwiza.
He needs to come into a beautiful soul.
Amatorero niyo point y'aba leaders tugira muri community zacu.
Churches, that's those are the leadership we have. Please stand up.
Tugabanye igisirimba.
Let's minimize the gisirimba.
Tuvura abana barwaye.
Let's care for our children who are sick.
Tugabanye ibintu cyane mvuze ngo tugabanye iby'umwuka mantera amabuye, tugabanye ibintu biri spiritual tuje mu buzima busanzwe, tubwira abana Imana iri mu buzima busanzwe.
Let's reduce the spiritual activities and talk about reality.
Nimureke mu nyigisho zacu tuje tugira social teaching.
Let's teach our kids about social things.
Nimugire imishinga y'amatorero yita kuri iki kintu.
Let's have ministries within the church that if there's one thing that the government of the US puts so much money in is really to fight drug use.
Ejo bazaja muri prison kandi Imana igiye muri prison leta mutanga amafaranga menshi ubuzima bwe bwose kurushayo bakamutanze kugira ngo akire.
This is because when children are into drugs, they end up in jail, and once they're in jail, the government spends so much money when they're in jail. So Mahoro, let's make a campaign.
The Save Mulenge campaign tukoze abana bacu urubyiruko rwacu ko rurafatureba.
So like a Save Mulenge campaign, let's make a campaign because our children are dying and we're watching it.
Structure ya Mahoro mureke dushemo n'iki kintu.
Within Mahoro structure, let's put a structure for mental illness.
Kwemera ngo byarabaye nyine byaje ngo tuzemere dukomeze dushingura ntabwo zo bintu mureke dushireho akacu.
Let's not accept that it has happened. Let's try
mu kurangiza hari umuntu wavuze ngo our trouble is not ignorance but inaction, cyangwa se nimba nabisobanura ikibazo dufite si ukutamenya.
The problem we have, it's not being ignorant,
ahubwo ni uguceceka.
It's being silent.
iyi mpuruza ndabasanga umuyumve.
So the call to action, I really implore you to listen.
Nyabuneka,
please,
ibiyobyabwenge ni indwara igiye kutumaraho.
Mental health is a disease and it's going to kill us all. Let's defend ourselves.
Turere abana bacu twirwaneho.
Let's care for children.
Iyo concept tuyikure mu muzo twuko tuyumva.
Let's let's move the concept into this.
Bazakubwira ngo ni haga impanuka mbere guha undi muntu mask banzo yishireho.
In the airplane, they tell you before you give someone else a mask, use put it on yourself first.
Mu bibazo tuza kubazwa ndarangije timumbaza ibibazo byinshi ahubwo mutanga ibitekerezo.
Before you ask me questions, please give ideas.
Kandi nje mumfashe
and help me.
Ni umutwaro nikoreye nimukubura uko umukoresha kubera ko turazana tukavuga ngo ngo twafashijwe ngo cya kiganiro cyawe turagikora hiki turagira gute ninde mwana umwe twa saving abyibuze uwo mwana wacu tukamukiza please.
I really want you to give me ideas because this is something that is really dear and near to my heart. I want to save children and we all should work hard to save at least one life.
Si ikibazo cy'umuryango umwe.
And this is not a problem just for one family. It's a community level problem. Thank you.
We need Jean ngo nimba wazi ukaba uri gusobanuraho. Murakoze.
Thank you. Jean, urashaka gusobanura?
Murakoze cyane nagarutse kandi ntimundambigwe.
Thank you so much. I return again. Please be patient.
Nkuko nari nabivuze nitwa Mwamikazi Bagabo.
Like I said, my name is Mwamikazi Bagabo.
Tugiye kuganira ntabwo ndi busubire muri everything that they said.
We're going to have a discussion. I'm not going to repeat what he said.
Ku mpamvu z'umwanya ndatanga ibibazo bikeya umwanya wagiye. Ndatanga ibibazo bikeya.
I'll ask a few questions.
Nituzajya tuguhereza umwanya wo kuvuga, please go straight to the point.
If we give you an opportunity to ask questions.
Kubera ko nitujya mu makuru ntago turi bubone umwanya w'ibyo byose.
Let's use our time wisely.
Ndatangirira ku kibazo kimwe mbaza Dr. Justin ko twaganiriye hejuru y'abana kera bagize icyo kibazo cyo kuba addicted to drugs and everything. Ni yihe nama wagira ababyeyi bagifite abana bazima yenda batarajya muri ibyo ngibyo, ni gute bakwitwara ku bana babo, ibiganiro ni ibihe bagirana?
Dr. Justin, for parents who are already facing, the challenges you talked about, what are the strategies? What can they do?
Okay. Ndabanza mvuge ko bafite abana bafite ikibazo cy'ibiyobyabwenge kuko haracyari icyizere bavurwa.
I will talk about children who already have those problems, there is hope.
ntabwo nshaka ko tubajugunya ngo tuvuge ngo reka dutangire ko nono haracyariho icyizere.
They're not outcast. There is hope.
Nimuvugane n'abaganga babo bana.
Please speak to their physician, people with skills.
Indwara iravurwa.
It's a disease. It can be treated.
Wa mwana mwereke urukundo.
Show them love. Show your kids love.
Muhere mu muryango mumwereke urukundo, mumwereke ko mutamuheba.
Show them love at the setting in a family.
Noneho yemere ko afite ikibazo, mwese mushakire igisubizo hamwe cy'uko yavurwa.
As a family, create an understanding and talk about the problem together so they can be treated.
Kuko umuntu kuva mu biyobyabwenge hariho etape 12.
There are 12 steps to come out of. There are 12 steps to come out of drug addiction problem.
Kandi zo zose wa muntu ntazivamo ari wenyine, agomba kubona icyo twita natural support. Nuguhera ku babyeyi mu nzu, babandi bamwumva, babandi bashobora kwicarana nawe bakabona yabuze ibitotsi bakazuka bakicarana.
One of the most important step is them to have natural support. The people that love them, the people that are around them, who will accompany them to get better.
So abafite abana bataraja muri ibyo bintu.
So for parents who have kids that are not facing those problems,
tureke kwirara niko babyitangira, ni tureke kumva ko turi immune, tureke kumva ko bitazatugeraho.
Let's not be complacent.
Tangira ubunyine.
Start today.
Menya aho umwana wawe ari.
Know your child, where they are.
N'ubu ku kwezi hari umubyeyi wampamagaye ari kurira.
This month I communicated with the parents.
Umwana w'imyaka 15 yaragize amezi 3, ababyeyi batazi ko umwana atazaja mu ishuri.
A parent spent 3 months not knowing if the child goes to school.
Bisi kazi kamutora.
A bus takes them,
ikamujana ku ishuri,
takes them to school,
ikamugarura mu rugo,
brings them home.
Uzazi ngo umwana ariga.
A parent thinks the child goes to school.
Babimenye ishuri bahamagaye ngo umwana yikubise hasi. Tibazi cyabaye bagiye bamutwaye kwa muganga muri emergency basanga umwana yanyoye urumogi rwa murenzi. Umwana w'imyaka 15.
And then a parent found out after the child went to the emergency room having overdosed.
Icyo gihe abarimu bamubwiye ati by the way uyu mwana agagize amezi 3 ataza mu masomo skipping aja ku ishuri akirirwa muri hallway.
Then the parents learned then that the child does not actually go to school.
Tumenye ngo se umwana koko nimba basi muzanye biravuga ko yiriwe ku ishuri.
Let's know the whereabouts of our kids.
N'abavyeyi bangahe hano baza bahamagara abarimu batabahamagaye umwana afite ikibazo, uwo gahamagara abarimu kugira ngo checking ku bana babo.
How many parents communicate with school or attend parent-teacher conferences?
Naho duhera abarimu barabikunda kuko bashaka umubyeyi baba ba partners.
Educators like to be partners with parents.
Ndibaza ko ari aho twahera.
I think that would be a good start.
Tukanaganira n'abana bacu tukabibabwira.
Engage our children.
Uranga kubabwira ariko hari uzababwira ababwira ni muze mwumva uko bimeze.
If you create that void between you and your child, other people will take advantage of that.
Thank you so much. Our protocol muhereza abantu microphones. Dufite umwe hariya already ariko bakiri kumushyira microphone. Hari ntekereza ko ibi bibazo abana bagira mu amazi. Can we have some water?
Singeza amazi.
Thank you. Nari mvuze ngo ntekereza ko ibibazo abana bagira byo mu mutwe byinshi biterwa na trauma. Wavuze ngo trauma ishobora kuva ku mubyeyi ikajya ku mwana.
You talked about how trauma can be intergenerational.
Twavuye mu gihugu cyabayemo intambara nyinshi, abantu barapfushije abandi barapfuye.
We come from a country that's
ababyeyi bacu has been through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ababyeyi bacu banyuze muri byinshi.
Yego. Hari ukuntu trauma iba ubuzima bwabo bwa buri munsi bo ntibabone ikibazo kibarimo kubera ko they've lived with it ubuzima bwabo bwose.
Sometimes parents don't know if they actually have trauma. They've lived with that trauma for all their lives.
Niki wabwira ababyeyi, especially the survivors, yaba mu Gatumba yaba muri Congo irubumbashi, niki wabwira ababyeyi that have been through that?
What can you tell parents that have gone through all those cycles of wars?
Icyo mbabwira nuko mubwira ngo niba tuvuge niba warahunze uva za Lubumbashi ugafungwa.
If you've fled from Lubumbashi and have been in prison
utwite umwana
while pregnant,
ukamubyara waravuye muri prison,
and you give birth after having come out of prison,
tukicare ngo wumve ngo wa mwana ari immune.
Please do not think that your circumstances did not affect your child.
Aho no kwerekana severity cyangwa se ubukana bwa trauma.
That shows the severity of trauma.
Umugore wabaye abuse mu rugo n'umugabo ukubitwa n'umugabo buri munsi atwite abyara umwana urwaye.
A woman that's abused at home while pregnant, they give birth to a child with problems. What does that mean?
Wa mubyeyi ntuzajya uryama ibyo wanyuzemo ukabirota kuko zimwe ni symptom karara udasinziriye wikanga ugira uzajye wumva ko na wa mwana nubwo yari afite umwaka umwe ubwonko bwiwe bufite bya bintu.
The pain and the abuse that parents go through literally affects their kids.
Hari aho abana baturusha level ya resilience cyangwa se yo gukomerera ibibazo, ariko kandi ntitwumve ko abana bacu bo byambayeho. Uyu mwana ngo yarakiri uruhinja ariko ni umuntu mwari muri kumwe mwabinyuranyemo yonse amashereka yawe ufite trauma, amarangamutima yawe mwarayasangiye.
The circumstances and the difficulties you went through as a parent, do not think that, even though your child was young, they've equally been affected by the same abuse, same trauma, same circumstances.
Nushaka ubufasha uzahita ushaka n'ubw'umwana.
While you're seeking your own help, do not forget your child.
Kuko nubundi iyo tuvura abantu ubaza nibiki byakubayeho wari kumwe nande ibona aya masymptome wabonaho niki ubona kuko uvuye umuntu umwe mu muryango ni nko kuvura igituntu umuntu umwe famille yose ikirwaye.
In the treatment process, we all look at all the stakeholders that have been affected.
Icyo mvuga hariho level ya resilience abantu bose ntibafata kimwe.
People have different resilience levels.
Twarabaye mu Gatumba, twaravuye mu bapfu mu ntumbe z'abantu, ariko umugireho ikibazo na kimwe undi bikamugiraho ikibazo.
People are affected by circumstances differently.
Hari n'undi mwumvise ko ubushakashatsi nakoze abazungu bataragera muri Afurika barwaye trauma ya genocide yabaye mu Rwanda cyangwa izo mu Gatumba.
Like what I said, the case workers who welcome us here, they get affected by the traumas we went through, having not lived the same episodes we did.
Thank you so much. Turakira ikibazo ku umupapa wicaye hariya. Microphone, bahereza microphone. Uriya wambaye ingofero, sorry. Over there.
Ubaza ikibazo azajya avuga izina rye kugira ngo ntaza kwibagirwa.
Murakoze. Nitwa Serge Mukire.
Uvugira hejuru.
My name is Serge.
Nasaba kumusobanuzi yaza kubicamo nyuma ndangije kuvuga nibyo byihuta.
Vugira hejuru.
Njyewe ndashaka kugira ngo nsabe mahoro ikintu kimwe, ikindi ni icyifuzo, hanyuma nze kuvuga nanjye participation yanjye ku bwoko bw'abanyamurenge. Ndasaba ko mahoro yagira televiziyo yihariye twamenya amakuru y'ukuri, tutagiye dukurikira social media y'abashaka views cyangwa abashaka kuyobya abanyamurenge tukajya tumenya n'aya matangazo cyangwa se ibiganiro bikajya bihora bicaho. Icyo ni icyifuzo kimwe. Cya kabiri, njyewe nize muri universite nize software engineering, ariko ntuyikoresha njyewe nkabaho hano, ariko nanjye kugira ngo neze igihugu cyacu imbere aho tuzaba nayo n'abantu bavuga ikinyamurenge ibyo ari byo byose. Muri ubwo buryo rero ndi gushaka ko twakwiga katuni ziri mu kinyamurenge zikigisha abana ikinyamurenge. Icya kabiri gituma abantu batadutabara tugira ibibazo hariya nuko tubikoresha ku flyers tukandika save murenge gusa, ibyo ntibijya bikora ku batabazi. Ndumva muri ubwo buryo muri yo katuni ni muri general nshaka kwiga filmmaking biri byagutse ku buryo tuzajya dukora documentaire y'ibyabaye biri mu ndimi zose ku buryo twumva abatabazi bakaduha ubutabazi ntabwo bajya bumva ikinyamurenge, tukabimixinga amashusho n'amajwi ari mu ndimi nyinshi. Murakoze. Icyanyuma, abanyamurenge dusa nka entertainment yacu ari gisirimba n'ibintu by'amakorari, ababyeyi ugasanga barasinga abana utaba mu korari ntaje mu gisirimba nyine mu kiyumbe kumva ko ntaco akoze, ariko nkumva amahoro yagira devoir yo kumva ko sport mu mikino gateza imikino imbere mu bantu bakize. Ubu ngubu abakinyi nibo ba mbere ku isi, imikino y'uburyo bwose abakobwa cyangwa abahungu, entertainment ntibiyongiye gusa kandi ababyeyi bakabishikira mu bana. Murakoze.
Murakoze. Again, nta mwanya dufite, please mugende straight to the point. Turafata muri iki gihande. Yego mzehe microphone.
Uriya wavuze ngira ngo yatangaga ibitekerezo nta kibazo yabajije.
Murakoze. Nitwa Joshua Rwumbuguza.
My name is Joshua Rwumbuguza.
Ndashimira Dr. Justin ku kiganiro yatanze ubushakashatsi ku makuru ahari ku kuri k'ubuzima turimo. Imana iguhe umugisha. Ikibazo nagize kuri ubu bushakashatsi ni uburyo ababyeyi babanza bakabona abakanselingi bumvise abana ububi bwo gufata ibiyobyabwenge hanyuma akabona kuja ku buvuzi.
How can parents receive counseling about the danger of drug addiction and then go to practitioners?
Hanyuma ikindi cya kabiri, nabonye kuri program n'icyifuzo muri gahunda zose turi kugenda tugaragaza imbogamizi z'ibibazo dufite z'uruhurirane rw'ibibazo tumaze n'imyaka myinshi, igihe cyinshi generasiyo zigatambuka. Nkibaza ngo se nimba atari ibanga, hari igenamigambi rihari rirambye ryo gusohoka muri iki kibazo abanyamurenge twahuye nacyo cyo kwangazwa, kugira ngo tugire ejo hazaza. Tese byaba gute nimba atari ibanga? Hari igenamigambi rirambye Mahoro yateguye by'imyaka tuvuge 10 cyangwa 20 cyangwa 30. Ni ukuvuga yuko ryo gusohoka muri ubu buzima, kubera yuko igenamigambi rija mu buryo bwo kumbuga nkoranyambaga kugira ngo abagira neza badufashe. Hari igenamigambi numvise kuko hari priorite turimo abanyamurenge by'intambara. Intambara ni umurongo umwe. Muri iryo genamigambi harimo uburyo bw'imiturire, bw'imibereho, bw'ubuzima mu buryo bikomatanya ibibazo by'uruhurirane dufite, ndetse no gusubira mu gihugu cyacu tugatura, kuko hariho abantu batuye bari mu buzima busanzwe. Kandi na hano dufite ibyo bibazo bitandukanye. Ese haba hariho impuguke mwateguye n'abanyamurenge kuko bafite kubaha amakuru y'ibibazo byose dufite twazabisohokamo gute? Murakoze.
Murakoze cyane. Nakiri wa nyuma haraza kubaho ama sections ya every panel zagiye zibera hano, abafite ibibazo mu byandika ahantu muraza kumwegera arabasubiza. Mwihangane kabisa n'impamvu.
Murakoze cyane. Nitwa Mujyanama Claude. Ndavuga ku biyobyabwenge. Njye nagize amahirwe cyangwa se menshi cyangwa se make yo kubana n'abantu babikoresha. Sinabikoresheje. Nabonye kariyeri z'abantu zikabishinga, abantu bafite impano zitangaje bakabona isa mu gihe gitoya cyane.
My name is Mujyanama Claude. I've had the fortune or misfortune of living with people that use drugs. I've seen people's careers dissipate.
So hari amoko menshi ya drug ku buryo bigera kuri level one n'umuntu umaze akabikoresha utabizi. Niyo ntibaza rero ku babyeyi bacu uzi ko tubameze. Umwana ashobora gukoresha drug mu nzu mubana ntubimenye. Ikibazo rero ngiye ko mbibona n'igisubizo numva cyabaho. Dukora imihigo ihere idashobora kuba n'amahoro cyangwa se ku level y'imihana cyangwa se amakanisa bitewe n'icyo mwahitamo. Akajyaho nibura weekly cyangwa se monthly basis yuko abana bahura. Kubera ko ababyeyi bose bafite icyo kibazo majority baragifite baba involved kuko kirabaremereye bazwara umutwaro. Icyo cyumweru cyaba cyangwa se ari ukwezi bahisemo hakaba inyigisho zijyanye n'ibiyobyabwenge n'abana bagahabwa chances zo kuvuga uko baza kenshi niko birekura niko banavuga n'amadroge bakoresha na system bakoresha ku buryo bizongera ubumenyi bwo kumenya droge ziri mu rubyiruko ni izihe dushobora kuzimenya izo arizo n'umuntu wamenya ngo umwana akomeze gutya hari kitari kugenda neza. Hanyuma ntibirangirira aho ngaho hakabaho n'imihindo follow up y'ibyo bintu. Niba bavuze amadroge bakoresha amashyashya yandikwe data zibe collected. Niba hari abakoresha ngo hari azabivuga muze ba counselors muri iyo meeting tujye building database tumenye progress ibyo turi gukora. From there bizaba byoroshye gufata policies zatuma duhangana n'ikibazo tuzi neza ibyo turimo. Murakoze.
Reka nsubize ibibazo bibiri nibyo kimwe ni icy'amahoro ibya planning Pastor Joshua yabajije ndakerekera ubuyobozi bw'amahoro barakigusubiza. Yes. So Joshua yabajije uburyo bwo gutanga inyigisho ku bana kugira ngo bamenye ko bafite ibibazo.
Joshua asked about strategies for parents who have problems.
Iyo niyo nzira n'ubundi abantu bakoresha iyo ufasha abantu bari mu biyobyabwenge kugira ngo babivemo.
That's actually the process we use to help people to come out of that addiction.
cyane muri community zacu aho ibiyobyabwenge ari tabu ari kirazira.
Especially in our communities where drugs topics are taboo.
Cyangwa se mental health muri rusange indwara zo mu mutwe ari tabu.
Or mental health problems were taboo.
Reka mbahe ubuhamya buto.
Let me give you a testimony.
Kuva mu mwaka w'ibihumbi 2014 kugera kuri 2018 ibihumbi 2012 kugera muri 2018.
Since 2012 to 2018
nari mfite program ifasha impunzi mu bibazo byo mu mutwe.
I had a program that's focused on refugees regarding
refugee mental
health program.
Kandi ntibyari bizabene wacu gusa byari impunzi aho ziva zikaje.
It was regarding all refugees of all origins.
So community zacu z'abanyafurika zagiraga ibibazo byo kwemera ko bafite PTSD ku buryo abantu batabyemeraga ukabona ntibashaka no kubyumva.
African communities live in denial. They don't even acknowledge that they have PTSD problems.
Ariko mu buzima busanzwe ukabona umuntu ararwaye ariko ngo kubona umuntu acumbagira ariko akakubwira ngo ni muzima nta kibazo afite.
But in normal life you can see symptoms and signs of problems.
System nakoresheje icoge kandi yamfashije cyane kandi iba model ama state menshi na government bagenda replicating.
The system I employed that I actually became a model for many states.
nakoze icyo twise community support groups.
I came up with community support groups.
Aho nigishaga abantu by'umweru 7 babwira kugira ngo wumve mental health icyo aricyo cyangwa se wumve indwara zo mu mutwe icyo aricyo.
Where I coached people for 7 weeks to understand what mental health is.
Twatangiraga mbwira abantu ngo mbwira story yawe, umuntu akaza agahagara hano akambwira aho yavukiye akagira iminsi 3 avuga story yiwe.
I started
tugataha ntaco mvuze.
I started where people would lay out their stories and where they come from.
Yagaruka nkamubwira mbwira ugeze mu Gatumba byagenze gute, akagera wenyine ahambwira uko ubwicanyi bwo mu Gatumba bwabaye, sinjya bimubwira akabizana wenyine.
People started opening up.
None nkabona entry point nkamubaza hari icyo kibitekerezaho, hari umunsi ushobora kubyuka cyangwa se ninjoro waryama ibiriya bintu bikagaruka mu nzozi.
Then created an entry point where we would dive deeper into challenges, and then they would admit how it has affected them.
Se uziko birakugoye ati ndwara umutwe udakira.
Then they would admit
how it's affected. Wavurwa ati wavurwa ngwino tuzabona. Bamwe bakansanga muri office akanga kubivugira muri ya community abandi bari akambwira ati narashize mfashe.
Then people started
icyo ngiye hariho uburyo ugenda ubizana buhoro buhoro kugira ngo abantu badahunga. Nta muntu barambwira ngo yango sindi umusazi, ariko at the end of the day wenyine akaza kunyibwira ati ahubwo narasaze byaracitse.
So that model worked where people admitted and where
ubwo buryo bwakorwa. Iyo curriculum n'ubu ndayifite.
I still have that
abashaka nayibaha, abashaka ko mbibafashamo. I don't need money. Ntawe naca n'urudolari nimba ari ikintu kizofasha abana bacu cyangwa se ingo zacu cyangwa imihana yacu. I don't need any money.
I'm ready to help those who are in need, and I'm not looking to make.
Dufite abantu bize ubuganga muri twe, dufite aba nurse,
we have nurses,
we
have psychologists.
Mwakoze program twakwishira hamwe twenyine turaziranye.
We can come together, we know each other and help our community.
Hawe tuzasaba amafaranga niri ya $20 zishaka kutugora. Muhumure. Nta biri zaza nyuma yiyo, ariko icyo tuzabonamo muri future yacu twese tuzagcelebrating. So nagira ngo kubwire ko yes birashoboka. Mahoro ama churches, iyo mvuga ngo ni muzagire cyo ndavuga ama churches nkavuga na mahoro.
When I talk about
abazafata ya mbere, let me know, nzakorana namwe nzabafasha.
Churches and mahoro, we can come together.
Claude yavuze ingaruka z'ibiyobyabwenge. You are right. Ibiyobyabwenge hano bizicira abantu career bakaba abo ku muhanda.
Drugs affect people's career and they become homeless.
Mahoro twakora ama camp.
Mahoro can organize camps.
Churches twakora camp z'abana.
Churches can organize camps.
Bahe example ntoya turangiza.
One example.
Twebwe tuba mu itorero rya Zion muri Dallas.
I am a member of Zion Temple in Dallas.
Sama tugira camp y'abana bacu.
Every summer we have.
Umuyobozi wacu apostle agenda kamarana nabo 2 weeks.
Our leader spends 2 weeks with children.
Yagerayo akabambura amatelefone.
And then he takes away their phones.
Muzi biba muri nyuma y'ibyo byumweru 2.
You know what happens after those 2 weeks?
Abana baza baje muri salo kwiyogoshesha ya misatsi.
Our kids come transformed.
Abana baza bavuze ibintu bakora ati buriya ababyeyi bacu gabicara hariya ngo turi tekada nkanje. Umwana akivuga kirondora yagera mu rugo yangura akayizanira umubyeyi ati burya nyamara naguhishaga ibintu. Duha abana bacu space.
Our kids create and take advantage of that space.
Duha abana space aho baganira bonyine, baganire n'abantu bari muzane Claude hano mubajyane muri camp akubita umuziki abana bishime, haza umuntu abaganirize mu rurimi bumva. Tubwira abana bacu mu ndimi batumva.
Find ways for where children can communicate.
Twaza tubivugana muri to nawe twari kumwe, uzi ko dutonganya abana bacu tibumva ibyo twababwiye.
Sometimes we talk to our kids and they don't understand what we told them.
Umubyeyi akabwira abarimo tubwira ugahaguruka ukabwira abana ngo nimumanuke nimuze.
Sometimes
umwana akakoza ngo tuje, ukamubwira ngo wepfa kumanuka gusa ambara inkweto injira mu modoka tugiye ndakubwira tugeze mu modoka tugomba kureba ibyo byararangiye uwo mwana kurarera a stranger mu rugo rwawe.
There are miscommunication between parents and their children.
Twereke abana bacu urukundo.
Show love to our kids.
Bazatubwira ibyo babonera ku ishuri.
And they will trust us with the truth.
Building a trust.
Let's build that trust.
Yeah.
Thank you.
murakoze cyane, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Kandi ntibikaza biba ngo turumvishije tubajije ibibazo muzaza mugera n'umugera mu mago mubishire mu bikorwa. Murakoze.
Washaka nyuma y'ibi available. Natanze ku kibazo cy'indwara zo mu mutwe, ku kibazo cya drugs. Guys, natanze umwanya wanje. Nimba uri n'umubyeyi ufite icyo kibazo uzajya umpamagara, I will stop what I'm doing tuvugane nawe kuko uwo mwana ni uwanje, uwo mwana ni uwacu twese. Murakoze.